Hi, and welcome to Wait, Hold Up What. I am Dawn, and today I have a very lovely guest by the name of Veronica. And even though, background information, we recorded this episode a couple weeks ago, and I'm not sure if I plugged the microphone in. So we didn't get any sound. We just got the two of us very animatedly miming things. And I remember that in that episode, I asked you the question I'm about to ask you, and I already forgot the answer. So I'm not exactly sure what the last name you go by is. Okay. I wasn't sure because I always put it another way, so that's good for me to know. So Veronica is a friend of mine that I have known for a number of years, and you work in the medical field, but you're not a doctor.
I'm not a doctor.
Okay, so what do you do in the medical field?
I'm a director of operation.
Okay.
So my role is to help serve the people who serve our patients.
And make sure everything runs smoothly.
Yeah.
Guys. A mother of two.
I'm a mother and a life guide to two human beings.
I like that. A life guide to
Yeah.
two human being. Ooh, that's kind of fancy.
My job is just to help guide them through life.
And we talk a lot. And I think currently at this stage in my life, the deepest conversations I've been having lately have been with you. They've been very philosophical in nature, and they've been, I would say, targeted at what I feel like is a transitional period, I would say, in my life. For no rhyme or reason. Like, most people think of transition as like become a child to an adult or single to married or a non-parent to a parent. I didn't know how to say that. Like those types of things, or like retirement. And I remember growing up, and you always heard about a midlife crisis, right? Anybody who had a 50th birthday or even a 40th had the black balloons and the like caution tape, and it was like, you're over the hill. And by the way, I thought they were. I really thought that they were over the hill. Like, I don't know if I would still think this if I looked at them now, but at the time I thought they looked old. I thought they sounded old, and I thought they acted old. And at each stage of my life, when I hit one of those, the 30 and the 40, and I'm coming real close in on 50, I'm like, this is not what I thought it was going to be. This is not what it was mirrored to me or exampled to me. It's different. But I understand the idea of a midlife crisis now. I understand the shift that happens at this age. That crisis might be too large of a word, but where all of a sudden everything you thought you knew changes. Do you feel that a little bit? Okay.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is a lot of what we talk about, even though we don't put it in those terms, right?
Yeah.
It's like everything is changing. I think I'm good with it. I think I like the way that it's changing, but it does require an adjustment. And sometimes the people around you are adjusting with you. Sometimes they are reverting. Sometimes they're ahead of you. And then it's deciding where you spend your time so that the transition becomes easiest. For you, some of that transition in the conversations that we have, I was going to say revolves around, but I don't know if that's the right word, so you can correct me. But is this transition of partnership, married, to fully embracing the singleness that you're in right now? Would you consider it evolution, a transition? Like, how would you characterize that?
Good question. I think it's a transition in my life, and my relationship status isn't so much that transition revolves around it, so much as the relationship status is something that is flowing through it at the same time.
Ooh, put more words on that.
So I would say that through the lens of these different transitions, from going from a married state to single to somewhat attached to somebody to single again, at each point in time, I've had the opportunity to relook at myself and how I view myself. based on what I thought my life was going to be.
Yeah.
And then coming to terms with who I am and who I thought I was going to be.
And do you think there's a component of it also where you're not who you thought you would be, but you're like, kind of like her?
Yeah, more so. That was their answer. And yes, you're like, yeah, she's all right. Or so that like I'm discovering who I am by removing all of these layers that society has told me I'm supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And at the core and center of who I am and allowing that person to flourish and building confidence around truly myself, like anchoring in actual true confidence. I am learning to really appreciate and love myself.
I love that.
You know, so like
I really
band-aids
like
of
that.
who I was,
Yeah.
they're being removed.
Yeah. And the lessons, sometimes the lessons that we get, our brains are not ready to receive yet. And so you could have gotten a message 10 years ago that then got filed in the back for because you knew it was important.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, right? And we all have different reasons for allowing stuff in or keeping it out, right? It got stored and then it comes back and goes, oh, that's why that happened. That's why that was the lesson. And now I can fully embrace it and like step into it in a new way, right?
Yeah.
Do you think before this period of time, did you know you weren't confident before?
No.
I feel the same way. I
Yeah.
thought I was very, very confident, even though the messages I was delivering to myself were not the kindest.
100%.
I thought I was being legit. I thought I was being real. I thought, like, I looked at the world and I would see people who would go up and be like, I'm dope and I'm this and I'm whatever. And I'd be like, oh, so I saw you yesterday and you are not as dope as you think you are, right? And I never wanted to be this egoist. I never wanted to be this person that thought I was the shit. And so every small thing I would attack when I was alone. You dumb shit. Like, I can't believe you said that to me. And by the way, though that happens still. And I can recognize it now in the moment and go, did you need to call yourself a name? Okay, maybe you didn't like what you did in that moment and you would like to correct for the future, but that doesn't mean you're a loser, right? Like, and so the way I handle it is different, even though that habit still tries to sneak itself in, right? And I was never confident about my looks. I knew I was never confident about my looks. Like that was always there. But I thought that was a legitimate reason to not be confident. So I didn't feel bad about being unconfident about that because I was like, no, I'm ugly. So it's fine. I'm just being honest. Right. But my personality, I was like, well, I'm funny and I'm, you know, somewhat smart. Like, so I could say that even though I would send the negative messages to myself.
Right.
So what kind of negative messages did you send to yourself before that now either don't get in or that you've learned how to quiet?
Yeah. A lot of it had, well, for me, it was both physical and attacking my character or mostly my level of intelligence. So, right, I was never skinny enough and or pretty enough ever.
So baffling to me.
Which is one of the reasons why I have always thrown myself into exercise, I think. While it can be very healthy and take care of yourself, for me, it was also a way to punish myself sometimes. And as I've gotten older, I'm working very hard every day to look at exercise as a way to make my body stronger and to take care of myself as opposed to punishing myself. So that has kind of changed. I will always struggle with how I look physically, but I can help to turn on or turn that off a little bit easier now. And I can recognize when it comes up.
I think a lot of women, what you just said about exercise, and I think you could include eating in this, right? Because diet culture and all of those things. I think a lot of women would resonate with that, where there's this double-headed animal, if you will, of health, of what it means to live a healthy lifestyle. And you're either all in or all out. Sometimes it's hard to find the middle, but when you're all in, When you're all in, there's an element of reward and punishment.
Yeah.
And when you're all out, there's an element of reward and punishment. Because you're like, well, I've been doing so good lately. I'm gonna go get an ice cream cone. Or like, that's a simple example, but or I'm gonna have a glass of wine.
Snowball.
Yes.
I'm gonna eat more. Eat more.
And then now I'm a loser because I didn't have restraint or I didn't. It's interesting. I'm doing an episode in a couple of weeks with a woman who works in strength and nutrition culture. And that the conversation is, how do we build strength without resistance and without limitations for ourselves? And how do we deal with health in that way where we don't shrink, we grow, like, right? And so it's confidence and and all of that.
Yes, I mean, society tells us how you should and shouldn't look, right?
Yeah.
And be small and to
Yes.
have muscles. And I've gotten that feedback from partners in the past. If you have muscles, like you're too manly, you should
Yeah.
stop lifting so much, right?
Yeah.
And I think what the basis for all these things for myself and flowing through life and growing as a human person is that at my core, due to years and years of consistent communication with me, that I am somebody who isn't worthy of things,
Mhm.
I have left having confidence. And
Yeah.
so as
So
a
you
result-
believe what people say, whether they are reliable resource or not.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's interesting because when you think about how all these things go together, there's so much that goes into this idea of confidence and healing and paths and even proximity or a location. So for example, I was relatively thin most of my life without knowing I was thin. And I mean, I knew early on and I always wanted to gain weight because I grew up in a household that had different cultural standards than a traditional white household. And so I grew up thinking that Black women were the epitome of beauty in my household, right? And so and my stepdad would always say, "You got to show them big, pretty legs," right? And it was like, "Oh, well, I'm too thin," so I always wanted to gain weight. And then when I started to gain weight, it became an issue, right? Even though it wasn't a ton yet, but it depended on where I lived. So when I lived here, I was just average. When I lived in California, I was morbidly obese to people, even though I was not. And then I would go to New York and people would tell me I was too skinny. And it was like, because I traveled so much. So everywhere I went, I got a different message. And because I wasn't fully confident, that was the message I leaned into at the time. So it was like, oh, they are saying I'm fat. I better get in and lose weight and do all of these things. Now they're saying I've gone a little too far. So I've got to eat some soul food and put on some pounds in the back or whatever, right? Like, and so all my ideas of beauty were really messed up, even though in this country, white Anglo-Saxon patriarchy country, theoretically, blonde hair, blue eyes, big boobs, I was supposed to be what the beauty standard was. But that wasn't how I was raised culturally and all of those things. And so I rejected that. I didn't think any of that, right? And so you question all those things. But if my beauty is dependent on where I live or who I'm talking to, I'm never, ever going to feel accepted for how I look. And I don't think we internalize that when we're young.
No, because you're being told that this is what you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
So that this ping-ponging of emotions and anyone telling you that the target is changing, you believe to be the case.
They must be the expert.
Right. And if you also don't see yourself.
Yeah.
So I grew up from the time I was born until just about middle school in Des Moines, Iowa.
Wow.
And and my whole dad's side of the family are blonde, blue-eyed Americans. And my mother is Colombian, dark-skinned Colombian. And I was, for the most part, in the areas that I was going to school and people I knew, was like the only brown-haired,
You were othered.
semi-dark-colored little girl. And I never saw somebody who looked like me on television. And I also had a mother who was very critical of me, especially physically. And so I think that really,
Of course.
really hurt me. And it wasn't until Jennifer Lopez than I saw anybody who remotely looked like me,
Yeah.
right? And then that was helpful, but still not, because I grew up in the 90s
Yeah, yeah.
when Victoria's Secret was what it was, and I didn't fit that mold either. So, yeah, that was definitely, that's been an area of growth for myself, is leaning into just, how about I just, like, love me, right? Like,
I used to have a theory. This this is how dumb you are when you're young, you guys. And I was not dumb. My theory was I I was okay being cute. And I really identified more with that. And I think because my personality was a little bit bubbly and people always thought I was extroverted, even though I'm theoretically not. But I could fake it, right? I moved around a lot. I went to a lot of new schools. So you have to put on a show to meet friends and things like that. So my theory was, in order to be beautiful, you had to be tall. You had to be 5'7" or taller, right? And if you were in the middle, there wasn't anything for you. And I'm 5'4", 5'5", somewhere in there. I feel like it changes all the time. I'm in there. And I was like, if only I was 5'2", then I would be so cute, right? And then I would have this identity that was associated, but I'm just average. I'm in the middle, like, oh, like whatever, right? And it was the only thing. This is so funny. I never thought about it before, but I always wished I was like everybody else.
which, what does that even mean?
I mean, yeah, wow, it's so irrelevant. It's like, oh my God. But in that moment, that was the only thing that I was like, well, I guess I'm average or something. Like, but I used to tell people, like no one ever called me beautiful. There was only one person in my entire life who has ever told me I was beautiful. And it's my stepdad, right? And it's not even like, wow, you're so beautiful. He would just be like, good morning, beautiful. And not as a kid, it's more like as an adult. Like if I go to their house now, that's what he would say to me when I walk in the door.
Mhm.
He's such a sweet man. But I never heard that. So I was very good at tricking myself to say, okay, if I can't be that, what can I be?
Okay.
And then put myself in the box of what I could be, stay there.
Well, that's almost better than molding yourself, because that's all I've tried to do, is mold myself, whatever is beautiful, or whatever there are other people telling me. But I get cute a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely because I'm,
Yes.
and it's interesting. Like, that's a niche,
Mhm.
right?
Oh, it's a fetish. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
is.
yeah.
And I think one of the other things recently that I'm learning is that whatever that pendulum shift is, like, that's the thing I need to focus on removing from my space. And again, we've talked about this too, is a lot of this comes from this, at least for me previously, my desire to be attractive to the male gaze, right?
Yeah.
And so that's my area of focus right now, is removing myself from that. I don't need that.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that is liberating in and of itself.
Yeah. And what do you think? So I feel the exact same. Now, I'm actually going to ask questions. So part of this for me is I'm 48. I'll be 49 next week. Oh, yeah. That was probably the grossest face I just made too, but whatever. And I've heard a lot of women say this, and I can fully relate to it now. When I turned 40, the male gaze stopped happening. Every once in a while, there's an 80-year-old who catches my eye and gives me a little wink and but for the most part, people don't notice me anymore. So, like, I go into grocery stores and people physically run into me. That's how, like, invisible I am now, right? And I've heard a lot of women say that that happens as they age, right? Because that beauty standard changes and we're not seen as desirable or sexual objects anymore as a generalization. I don't want to, whatever. So when that happened, a light clicked for me. Well, if no one's looking at me anyways, what am I so worried about? I can just do me.
Right.
And do what feels comfortable. I don't have to wear a 5-inch heel anymore. I can't, but I also don't have to, right? So I stopped feeling like, oh gosh, no one's ever going to look at me because I can't wear a high heel. I was like, I can't wear a high heel. No one does. And I started exploring how I dressed, exploring how I went out in the world and like not worrying about it. And it made that transition easier for me. At the same time, I started healing, right? So healing looks different for everybody else. Mine was this deep traumatic healing and involved therapy and all sorts of things, right? Um, Everyone has their journey. And those two things combined, I couldn't tell you the last time I thought about whether or not someone looked at me. In fact, I was recently at a store. I don't remember if I told you this. I was at a store. I was on my way to go to a beach day. I was in full sweats, but like not cute sweats, like we can get dirty in the sand sweats, right? A baseball hat. I didn't wash my hair. Like my hair's kind of pulled back. No makeup. I did no effort but brush my teeth that day.
Thankfully.
Right? Okay. Yeah. I go to this grocery store to get one thing to bring with me, and I'm walking, and this man is walking opposite of me towards me. And he's 20, maybe 21. And he's looking at me like I am a T-bone steak and he is a pit bull. And I am like,
Also, gross.
yeah, but well, so when he walked by me, he walked. I want you guys to all see this. He walked this close to me, like brushed me and went, yeah.
Oh, okay. So all of this is actually good.
It's so close.
So it's like it, but also in my younger, I'm like that.
So this is this is why I'm using it. This is the difference. Okay. So in that moment, and he wasn't ugly, he wasn't gross, it wasn't that. But in that moment, I turned around and said, "No, sir." That was like gross because this is not an oh damn day, right? Like, first of all, for me, that is not how you feel. You're just being creepy. And also, even if it was an oh damn day, please do not ever get that close to me when I don't know you and did not invite you in. Like everything about how everything about how I embraced that situation in my mind was like, dude, I would tear your ass up. Like, no, right? Like, this is not how you do it. And it's an impatience. It's a disgust at the lack of respect or politeness, kindness, all of those things that when I was younger, even if I was like, oh, he's gross, I would have been like, oh my God, someone lot of like today with no makeup on and sweats.
Yeah. But now I think when you own your space and that confidence,
Yeah.
you can, those types of things repel you. Like,
Yes.
this is my space and this is my body.
Yeah.
And you do not have
Yep.
the entitlement to just enter this.
And I also don't need you to validate me in that way.
Yeah.
And like, I literally went in the parking lot, called my sister and her husband. And I was like, put your husband on speakerphone. Like, you will not believe what just happened. I got an oh damn. Like, and I was like, ew. And then it was creepy. And like, they're laughing at me, right? Like, it was a whole thing. And it just was so different. And I equate that to age and I equate that to healing. Because what I demand is different now. And that is not it, right? Like, no, sir. Thank you and goodbye. And so do you think, I know healing is part of your journey. So we'll do that first.
Yeah.
What did healing or what does, because it's a never ending process, right? Most people think, oh, I'm going to go get healed and then I'm great. No. This is life. It doesn't work that way. But what started the healing and what does healing look like for you? Like, is there a modality that you use? Is there lesson? What does that look like?
I mean, healing, when did it start? Oh gosh, I think really when I understood that I was making a lot of poor decisions leading to some very messy things in my life after years after my divorce.
Mm.
And then starting to peel those things back. It almost happened simultaneously to a certain extent with leadership training, because in leadership training, you have to learn a lot about yourself in order to lead others, right? So, I mean, that all came first, but I think once I recognized that there were decisions that I was making that were leading to some really messy decisions, at some point those two things converge. And I just started being really honest with myself and asking myself a lot of questions. So things that I would normally do in mentorship conversations with people who I lead, I would start asking myself those things, right? So if I felt a feeling, let's peel that back. Why do we feel that feeling? Well, what does that feeling mean? Well, right. So peel.
So when you peel, do you peel verbally?
Oh, it's all inside
It's all inside your head. Okay.
yeah, it's all inside my head. And I'm trying to get better at not necessarily needing to talk all of these things out with friends, but really be inside.
Trusting yourself and your relationship with whatever power you believe in.
And whatnot. Like, I mean, the thing is, the more you share, I've learned, the more you open yourself up for criticism. And that's not always the healthiest path when you're going down this healing journey, because people will bring a lot of themselves to what you're sharing with them. And I can be very open and vulnerable. And then it exposes me to, like, then not actually understanding the direction I'm supposed to go. And then I don't listen to myself and my gut. So I'm trying to lean more into being a little bit more cerebral and um, solitary in my
I think
healing
people,
journey.
or the other thing, I don't think I know this. The other thing is when someone goes on a healing journey, spiritual journey, change journey, whatever you want to call it scares the people in their life because it will impact them. So if you're changing and they're not ready,
Yeah.
their inclination is to say you don't need to change because they like the homeostasis that
Makes
is
sense.
there, right? So, and they don't know that I have to believe for humanity that there is rarely this thought that goes, I'm going to fuck their shit up right now and not let them heal,
I don't
right?
think
Yeah.
the case.
Yeah, but there is this trepidation subconsciously that if you do that, are we still going to be good? Is this going to work? And some people change in ways where you're like, that's scary because of my own journey,
Right.
right?
Calling something to the carpet for myself.
And am I ready for it?
Yeah, I think less so for me are people saying stay as you are, and more the more I open myself up. Um, I think because of some of the people that I've surrounded myself with who are very critical, feel like that's an open door for them to just dagger me, and that's not helpful right now. Like anything that I share, I already know I'm imperfect, so I'm gonna continue to work on those things, right? But more than anything, it also just takes away my ability to hear myself in my gut, and that's a really strong space for me. But it's also very easy for me to allow others to influence what my internal narrative is. So I'm working on that piece. So that's a lot of what I do is reading and a lot of research. So anytime that I run into something where hey, that's an opportunity for improvement or growth, let's learn about it. Let's learn what other people say about it. Let's get a book about it. Let's read through it, and let's really get educated.
So I have so many questions.
Yeah.
First one is, do you write?
I have started writing.
It's a really good way there's a ton of research about it I can share with you, but it's a really good way to take that internal dialogue and place it somewhere where you can examine it later. Because especially if you're someone, which I think all of us are, right? Our internal narrative is skewed, right? We tell ourselves stories for a long time that probably are false.
Yeah.
So when you write stuff down and you go back to it, you also have the ability to see the narrative and remove yourself from it a little bit rather than when you're talking to yourself and it becomes this like never ending dialogue, right? There's a period and there's a question mark in the writing. That has helped me a lot.
It also solidifies the thought.
It does.
Instead of allowing it to just be a thought that then goes away and then you never recoup it. Once you've written it,
yes.
written it.
There's a wonderful book by Elizabeth Gilbert called Big Magic. I recommend this book to anybody, but it is technically made for creators or like artists, artisans, whatever that is. But there's a concept in the book that says, you know, we get all these ideas, right? Every human being does. You get that thing that wakes you up in the middle of the night, thing that inspires you in the shower. And we are charged with whether or not we act on it or it goes away. But that idea doesn't actually go away. It just goes to somebody else, right? That is that is able to. And so if we can be conscious about that and recognize, look, is this an idea that I am inspired by and I do want to follow through with that? And that can be an idea in your personal life, in your work, in your art, whatever it is, right? But it's this interesting concept that nothing actually ever goes away. It just goes to another host, if you will.
It's just, I mean, that's just the concept of energy.
Exactly.
Never lost, right?
Exactly. There's no new ideas, right?
Yeah.
They're just recycled and expanded upon. That's why the best art is sometimes stolen and then revised and edited and all. It sounds awful, but it's better than that, I swear. Yeah, get it enhanced. And so, okay, so started to write and do things like that. And I also, just for the listeners, sometimes I cannot write fast enough for the way that my brain works. And so when I am having a bout with like anxiety or intense emotion, I will actually turn my phone on, either a voice memo or a video, but I'm not actually videoing myself. It's just next to me. And I will talk out everything that's in my head.
Yeah. If I have an idea while walking.
Yeah. And I can transcribe it into a journal or whatever, but it's just sometimes it's too
gotta
much.
get out.
Yes.
It needs to be in right
Yes.
form.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
great.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so that was one of the questions was, do you write? The other question was, do you, so you're like reading and you're researching. Oh, I lost it. I'm so bad. Okay, so as you go through this and you're finding out all these things and you're educating yourself. Oh, I know what it was. Yay, live. You said something about your gut.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like the body talks to us in multiple ways. So there's your full physical body, right? So people that deal with stress, depression, or mental health issues and life, stress can sometimes exhibit itself through the body, right? Through chronic illness and all sorts of other things. So that is one way our body is talking to us, right? And then I think that there's our head, right? So do you trust your brain, right? Do you trust your thoughts? Your heart, which some people mock, but that's kind of that emotional and psychological connection. And then there's your gut. It's that intuition. It's that trust. It's that uh, inner knowledge that you are the one that is going to take care of you.
Yeah.
Okay. Which one do you trust the most?
My gut.
Same.
And it's the one that I listen the most or should. I'm on Enneagram 8.
Would you say it's the one you're learning to trust the most? Okay.
But it's always the one that's like the strongest, right?
Mhm.
So like my heart, when in love,
Mhm.
I can just let all things go and that leads to the messiness, right?
Yeah.
But I can't trust my heart
Yeah.
because I'm easily manipulated. I'm very easily manipulated. But my gut knows all things.
I
If
said the same thing.
with it. I mean, even so recently I had a staff member of mine who decided to hire somebody. I've never met the person that they're hiring. I haven't even looked at their resume. And she's like, I'm going to hire this person. I said, I have a really bad feeling about that hire. And I can't tell you what it is, but I don't think it's going to go well. And who was right?
Yeah.
I was right. And literally everything that I thought about this person, not knowing that there's never meeting this person, I could just feel the energy came through it.
So if we look at the past and we look at, because a lot of what we wanted this to be about is how this journey of healing and maybe even aging, whatever it is, right? How it changes the way you approach relationships and your desire for a relationship at all, like, right? Like a partnership, but for us currently, a cis hetero partnership,
Yep.
right? But it could be for any type of that. But you're like life partner, not like your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your guy friends, however you want to say that. Do you not use your gut in those choices before? And that's A. And if you didn't, was it because you didn't trust your gut or you weren't listening to it?
Not listening to it.
Is that because your head and your heart were louder?
I think it's because in those moments, I had a greater desire to be wanted and for this fantasy life to come to fruition than I wanted to be in reality.
So healing is such an esoteric word. So what changed the desire to be wanted? Or is it still, I mean, it probably is still there to some degree, maybe?
I actually every day care less and less if a man thinks I'm. And that is one of the most empowering things that I have stumbled upon. And I think it was my active decision to learn to love myself
Mhm.
that has led me down this path of not needing a man to show me attention.
Mhm. Do you need anyone to show you attention?
I need my babies. I love them and my close friends. That is the shift, I think, for me. Like
But
everything is about friends and
is it the same way? Or and obviously it's not
yeah, no, it
family,
was
right?
same
But there's something you could call like displacement theory, right? So it's like, okay, I used to get all of my value and my worth from I'm making this up, mom. This is not about you. But I just need a sample. So I used to get all of my value and worth from my mom, right? And then that transitions to a man in my teens or whatever, right? And then as adult, it might transfer somewhere else. But that unhealed need for worthiness in another human being can remain, or it can evolve. So do you think the value you're seeking through your kids and through the female friendships that you have in your life, do you think that's an evolved form of being worthy in someone's eyes?
maybe, but I don't think I need to be worthy anymore. I think that's the piece,
Okay.
right? Like I'm not working to be worthy for anybody because I just am intrinsically worthy as a human being on this
Mhm.
planet. Like that's where I'm kind of moving towards. So I want, not need. I want and benefit from having my close
Yeah.
relationships and the love of my children. And I work very hard at having a great relationship with both of those groups of people. Um, because that's what gives me fulfillment. I
Mhm.
do not find fulfillment in my romantic relationships with men as I have experienced over my life.
Mhm.
That's not to say that there aren't people who do. It is currently
Or that
not in
you
my story.
won't at some point.
But it's not my goal. It's not my focus as it used to be, right?
Yeah,
There's a bit of trust,
of
right,
course.
in that to release myself and allow my heart to just do the thing that it does, which is messy. Um, so I don't require that. And I think that's where this really strong sense of empowerment and confidence has come from is that like I'm just gonna walk through the world knowing that because I was born, I'm awesome.
So, have to ask something about that. And by the way, this is real esoteric.
Okay. Those are my feelings.
And I genuinely am curious about this because every, every therapist I have ever said, that is what they use. You don't need to do anything to be special. You don't need to do anything to be valuable. You are valuable by purely existence. And I really struggle with that. Very much struggle with that. And obviously that comes to my own trauma and my own healing and all of those things. But when I look at it in a general world sense, someone who is a serial killer, right? And they're what we would deem in our modern culture as evil. Is that person still worthy of love and all of those things? Now, I'm not saying that they're not,
Yeah.
because like I have certain beliefs that feel that way about people. Like, I don't believe anybody deserves to be treated poorly, even if they were someone who treated others poorly. Right? Like, I don't feel like one begats the other, but it is hard to think that you can be valuable just by existing. Sometimes I struggle with that. So how do you get there in your brain?
I think it's reminding myself that every time that I think something negative about myself, that that's a lie that I'm telling myself.
And do you think that's for everybody?
I would argue that likely, yes. And we all exhibit certain toxic behaviors as a result of our past. And it is not for me to judge how somebody,
Yeah.
I mean, it's very easy to judge somebody who's murdering somebody, right? Or somebody who's wronging somebody. Um, that would be a demonstration of how somebody is exhibiting the pain and trauma of their past. I am going to make an assumption. Um, just like my bad decisions are a result of my past and what my healing in. I'm reading a book currently that I've been reading for a long time that I've been talking about. And now I can't remember the name. What is it? The Body Keeps Score. Body Keeps Score. Yeah. And I've reached the point in the book where they're talking about the different parts of yourself, right? So there are different parts that show up that have evolved to protect who you are, right? Or they are exhibited during certain moments. But at your core, your you is the person who is supposed to be managing all of the different parts of yourself. And for the majority of my life, my manager, the critical person, has been front and center. My type A personality, my very go-getterness, my very goal-oriented, successful person that I am is because of that. But that part of myself has shown up because of all of the past trauma of being criticized and the levels of abandonment that I have experienced. And that is what I'm currently working on, is taking that part of myself and releasing it and allowing it to just relax so that my me can come forward. And the more my me comes forward, the more I really begin to love the person I am and forgive the person that I was, which I think is so important because I've made so many mistakes. So many mistakes. I just had a conversation with my daughter about this yesterday, that I am so critical and I'm so hard on my kids sometimes because I'm so afraid that they're not going to be successful, that it then hurts them. But the reason is because I have this really critical nature of myself, right?
But it's also like, I find this, I hate talking about raising kids because I don't have kids, so it doesn't feel fair for me to do it. However,
You can have opinions.
however, I see such an interesting thing when I watch people parent, whether it be on television or in a movie or real life. And it is a repeated pattern, generation to generation to generation. And it ultimately comes down to, we only teach and parent what we know.
Yeah.
And then we tend to fear the parts that we don't know. And so we try to protect them from them, right? But success for you looks very different than what success looked like for your mother and your grandmother, right? And generations before. And some of that is culture and some of that is who we are as individuals, right? I think about this a lot in faith-based communities where you're raising your child with all the information that you have and in a faith. But then the child turns their teen years or their young 20s, and they want to go and use all the things you've taught them to learn and see if that's the right path for them. And yet we go like this, and we try to keep them too close. And we don't trust them that we've given them the tools to navigate and find out what's right for themselves because we think we know the answer.
Yeah.
And that's the same fight we had with our parents, right? Where the world evolves and we as humans must do it as well, which means giving people the freedom to educate themselves, to learn and figure out the connection between the manager, the me, the heart, the mind, the soul, right? And what they may deem as successful might be different than what you deem because they have a different upbringing and experience, right? And I just think I think that's forgotten sometimes in our desire to protect, right? Oftentimes as women, we don't realize we're trying to raise these really strong daughters and sons too, but I'm going to relate it to daughters. And yet we aren't as mindful about the language we use when talking about ourselves in front of our daughters, which is what they're really learning. Yeah. Right.
Yes.
And I do this a lot in our groups when I hear one of a girl or whatever. I don't want to put any names out there, but like somebody talk bad about themselves. I often step in because I'm like, all of your kids are hearing you say this. Yeah. And if you don't think you're good enough and you're this beautiful creature that they look up, creature was weird, but this beautiful person that they look up to, and you're saying you're not good enough, and they're comparing themselves to you, they may then think that they're not good enough.
That's very true.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so my mom being so overly critical, just very directly
Mhm.
critical to me. Also, it was how critical she was of
Yeah.
herself.
Yep.
And so having children, especially having a daughter, I did know that to be true. I tried very, very hard to not say things about myself that are negative, for that reason.
Yeah.
And she's a pretty confident person, right? I mean, but I'm also really honest with her. But that's one of the areas that like I knew for sure is true because the way my mother felt about herself,
Yeah.
I internalized and was never good enough, right? And one of the reasons I work so hard is so that my mom can't criticize me. That is another thing I've learned. And so I try so hard so that that woman cannot criticize me anymore. And I've done more than my mother could ever have anticipated being able to do for herself. And that for me is like a leg up. Because it's so toxic.
Yeah.
But it's great to learn that. So now we're peeling back.
Yeah.
Learning about that
Yeah.
part of myself so that I can then be better.
Well, and it's, like when I think about my mother and my grandmother or whatever, like I don't know any ugly people. I don't. Like my friends are gorgeous. My mother was beautiful. She's still beautiful. Like my mom has one of the most beautiful smiles that lights up an entire room. And it's not just her smile, but like her eyes do it as well. And she just does not see it. So when I grew up and I had all these skin issues and allergies and chronic illness that manifested on my face. So if she thought she was ugly, right? Then I'm like, oh, that just validated how ugly I am.
And she didn't even just
And that wasn't her intention. That wasn't her purpose. That wasn't what it is. But you do not ever know how somebody sees you. I won't use any names, but if you think about anytime you're in a group of girlfriends, right? And we're all different shapes and sizes. And inevitably, the smallest girl talks about how fat she is. If you think you're fat, what do you think about me, right? And it has nothing to do with me, but I'm sitting there looking at all these gorgeous people I know that don't see what I see when they look in the mirror. And then it becomes that comparison and that talk, right? Now, again, it's a little different now at this age because it's like, look, also, most of my friends aren't white. So I'm really never going to meet that beauty ideal that I see in them, right? So mine is different. Uh, hang around a lot of black women when they tell you that black don't crack and white people don't age very well. And you're all of a sudden like, oh gosh, but like it's funny and it's very true. But also it's just like, okay, well then white does crack. So I'm never, right? Like I'm never going to meet that ideal. So why punish myself for it, right? Like,
but also like maybe that's the layer to start peeling away.
exactly.
I can be beautiful.
Exactly. It's just a different version of beauty.
Let's continue to inject this in our friendship.
Yes.
That like let's not have to show everybody our ugliness.
Yeah.
Like let's tell each other why we think that we're beautiful. And it doesn't have to be with physical.
It doesn't.
Right? Because like you said, it goes away.
It all goes away.
No one's going to be looking anyway.
And actually, I want to change that. Look, we're just it's reframing as we go. It doesn't go away, it evolves, right?
Yeah.
And you earn the battle scars that you get that showcase your beauty. Like I was always one of those weird girls who I didn't like the guys everybody else liked. It was like the weird looking guys, like the one with the scar on his lip or like a birthmark. Like I always thought that it gave character to who they are. And so I try to look at this aging process is the character that's coming into my life and my world. And whether it's looks, personality, all those things, it's part of what makes me me. And that character that I am and that there's interest in that, right? If you look a certain way or you're like everything is airbrushed and everything is perfect and there's no scars or battle wounds or character, it's not really interesting either. And I'm aiming for an interesting life, not a boring life, right? Like I want to make sure that I've ridden the ride till the wheels come off.
I am
right? Like I want to enjoy life without worrying about the things that I spent so much time worrying about. My size and things. By the way, and I'm not immune to it, right? Like
nobody.
this is this is a different weight that I'm used to. This is a different look than I'm used to, but I'm not who I was. And so is that automatically bad? No, it's just different. And how do I then learn to embrace what is in the now
To
and
appreciate.
appreciate it because it's still working for me, right? Like I'm still able to do things and be successful and be happy and laugh and cry and experience all these emotions. When this comes to partnership, so my mom asked me recently, Mom, you're just coming up a lot today. I don't even know if she listens, so it's even funnier. Yeah, because sometimes you get scared. You're like, oh gosh, what if my parents listen? And then they probably don't. They're like, I've heard you talking up, and you're like, which is what my sister said to me. She's like, I don't need to listen to your podcast. I know all your stories.
I love you.
So my mom asked me, she said, for a long time, she said that she feels like I will be missing out because in her mind, I chose not to have children and I am not in a partnership. And I really haven't been in a serious relationship in quite a lot of years. And she's worried that I will regret those choices. Now, we could argue about whether or not I think those were intentional choices or it's just where the way the wind took me and I followed the wind or whatever. It's irrelevant. But I said to her recently, we were just talking about it, and she's like, how are people dating or whatever,
Yeah.
Mom likes to give hot gossip.
Yeah.
And I said, I got to be honest with you. Of every single woman that I know, not a single one of them is really interested in meeting and marrying a man. We are all the women that I'm talking about, the cis heterosexual women that I am friends with. They still like men. Like they're not, you know, deciding to explore other avenues, but it's not a goal anymore. And she was like, really? And I was like, yeah, it's just, I don't even know if we think about it. And when we do, it's very utilitarian. You had to get to in the
You
weeds.
don't even need that.
I don't need that anymore. I need it on a long time. Shh, shh. I can't even believe I just said that. It's somewhat out loud, but it's just not like I don't need to be on a dating site. Look, if I'm somewhere and some meet cute happens, okay, fine. I'm open to the universe for sure in a way I have not been before, even though I thought I was. But it's just not something that's on my to-do list. And she was very blown away by that. So I think she just thought it was me. And
It's also generational too.
yes,
There's a big component of that, right? So this is something we've talked a lot about, and there are studies that suggest that women who are single live longer.
Yeah.
And men
don't.
Men who are single do not thrive like men who are in relationships or married.
Yeah.
And I think the concept of need is what we need
Yes.
to be talking about, right? It's not a need, it's a want. If that's what you want, that's great.
Yeah.
If it works out for you, awesome.
Yeah.
But there are other ways to fulfill our lives than just solely being focused on a relationship with a partner. And I feel so fulfilled in my life that I don't need it.
And, there's a lot of articles that have been coming out lately in every major newspaper and magazine and online resource where they're like, I can't remember the year, but pretty soon 45% of all women are choosing to be single or whatever that is, right? And they cite a couple of things, right? And it's economic security. Women are, at today's day and age, women graduate every level of schooling at higher rates than men. So women are more educated than men in our current culture. And with that becomes economic stability and financial stability, right? That we didn't have before. In the Women in Wealth series that we've been working on, we talked about women weren't even allowed credit until the 70s, right? So, and home ownership and all of these things. So the original basis for marriage of financial security and stability doesn't exist anymore. The other thing that these articles talk about is that there's an emotional labor component of it, that women want to free up that emotional labor to be about themselves and their own healing and their own happiness and joy and all of those things, rather than, and I'm saying this crassly, sorry, not sorry, raising another child that is a full-blown adult, right? And because gender norms, while they have changed in society in the home,
They
they've still
haven't.
remained
Yes.
pretty standard. So we do additional labor, and then we do the emotional labor of people that haven't done the healing or haven't chosen to go and do that. And we have all this toxic masculinity that is growing, not shrinking, be, in part because men are finding themselves to be obsolete in the lives of women because they are choosing not to listen to what women want and need, because they wouldn't be obsolete. Like, I have a, what do you call it? I do like a little word manifestation every day. And I have 4 words that I'm trying to manifest in my life. They have pretty much been the same words for like a decade. But this year, it changed one of them. So I would always say health, happiness, prosperity, and companionship. And I don't remember who I was talking to, and it wasn't about that, but they were like, "Oh, yeah, I don't strive for companionship anymore. I strive for partnership." And it blew my freaking mind, because I think a lot of women are trained or programmed to think that they need a companion in their life, and we romanticize this idea of companion. But if I have to do all the emotional labor and the extra home labor, all you're doing is maybe rubbing my feet every couple of months, and on every TV show, it sounds like that doesn't even happen that much in marriage. So now I'm like, I don't understand. Oh, well, you're helping to pay the bills. Okay, well, I make a salary where I don't need that. Where does that come in? And this idea that it's a partnership, right? That we're holding hands and we're jumping Thelma and Louise style over the cliff, right? Okay, then I can buy into that.
Yeah.
But I think
Partnership to
men,
be a relationship.
yes, but I think that men, traditionally, it hasn't been they have not been an equal partner in the relationship. They have been a silent partner that somehow got to make all of the calls.
Yeah.
And that's not the way life is right now. And now that we know you're not giving me what I need, and I'm okay with saying no.
Yeah.
If I don't get what I need.
Well, the hard thing too is that we've got some good girlfriends who have really phenomenal examples of a great partnership with their husband.
Yeah.
But those men are not just like ever. Just
Right.
And so I think you spoke loudly to it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to release my independence, and I don't want to take my brain space
Yep.
away to be in some sort of situation that inevitably dusts up a bunch of toxicity
Yep.
for me and takes me out of my ability to concentrate and focus on being my best me that I then get to bring to the world.
Like, my dad has 4 children, 4 grandchildren. He's never changed a diaper in his life. I'm sorry. No, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I don't like to change them. Well, you think it's a joy for the rest of me to change enough diapers to have had 3 children, and I have 0, right?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know this was an option.
Yeah.
Right. And that, to me, and I'm not trying to put a dig at my dad. That wasn't the intention of that. It's just that thinking.
Thinking of women's work and men's work.
Yeah.
And I mean, even
That thinking doesn't work for me anymore. If there's a trade-off, we can make that deal. Like, my sister lives with me, and for a very long time, I hate the way she unloads a dishwasher. Oh my gosh, it drives me up a wall. I said unload, right? Yeah, like put dishes away. She absolutely hates, and it drives her up a wall, how I load a dishwasher. So it was like, cool. You load, I unload, right? Like, we can solve this.
yeah.
That's a partnership, right? In a much smaller
But a
scale.
partnership isn't I'm going to load and unload.
Exactly.
But that's what it is.
Exactly.
For
Exactly.
everything.
And here's the light bulb moment. I think if you're a man listening, you helped raise us to feel this way.
Yeah.
You guys told us we could be anything. You said you wanted us to learn how to change the oil in our car and change a tire, right? You helped us because you didn't believe that men were good enough for us. And at the same time, you didn't raise your men to be good enough for us. And there's a response because you didn't raise them to be better than you. You raised them to be in your shadow or in your, what do you call that? In your image. And that's where the disconnect is.
Well, which is also, I mean, just that example alone is a very small of the population because there's such a large demographic.
Yes.
Fathers and their ability to be
For
present, all
sure.
those things,
For
right?
sure. For sure.
I think that's a really good point. My dad taught me how to drive a stick. He taught me how to change the tires on my car before I could drive. Like, this is my stepfather. Like, he really did a great job in all those. What he pushed me to be a strong,
independent woman.
He was like, never ask me to do something you can do for yourself.
Yep.
So much to the extent that, like, it's hard, I think, to be in a relationship with me because also I'll come to the table and say, I don't cook.
Yeah. I don't either.
I don't do those things. So, like, your traditional woman, I am not.
I am not. Yeah. And I will put moms in this too. And then we baby the sons.
I do. So I do that.
Right.
I don't know if there's see, this is the hard part. Yeah. I think that's evolutionary. Yeah. And I am a feminist through and through. Yeah. And I struggle to not baby my son. And my daughter calls me out on it.
Yeah. And because when you baby your son, he becomes a male, an adult child. Yeah. When he grows up. Yeah. And he expects women to baby and serve them.
Good to remember that. Yeah. It's really good to remember that. Like, no, I must hold him to the same standard that I.
And I want to clarify something as we close out. Sometimes when you have a conversation like this is not a traditional like ask and answer interview podcast where we plan the questions and we rehearse clearly. It's a conversation that you're eavesdropping on that we are doing in real time. And because of that, it can be easy to say something that could be misconstrued or could be generalizing a population. And that's not the goal of this. This is completely based on our experiences, past, present, and somewhat in the future, right? And what we see. And you get to take from it what works for you and what doesn't. And the rest of it. We're not here to offend. You're only here sometimes. I'm here all the time. I'm not here to offend anyone. I'm not here to point fingers at anyone. I'm here to start conversations in safe spaces so we can figure out as women, how do we navigate this world that theoretically is not made for us? And it becomes an exhausting proposition to continually move in a place that isn't made for you, to continually move in a place that tells you you're not good enough, you're not valuable enough, you have to keep doing things, you have to keep buying things, you have to keep losing and gaining and be everything to everyone. That is really fucking hard to navigate. And so the goal of this is to have open and honest conversations based on our experiences. So I get to learn from you, you get to learn from me, you get to learn from whoever sits here with me. And again, take what works for you and throw the rest away, right? Because that's what we do as humans. You don't want to be in anybody else's model, right? You want to be you, authentically you. And this whole conversation is about, or was about, how the process of healing and as we've talked about in previous episodes, embracing your authentic self, your beautiful weirdo, how that opens up a world for you that is truly unique to you and can help you find joy and ride this thing till the wheels come off. And that's the goal. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So I really want to thank you. I think this was a fun conversation. I hope that the microphone worked this time.
Yes.
So, we'll and Veronica's going to be back in a couple of weeks to talk about something else. So you'll get to see her again. How fun is that? Until next time, subscribe, listen, write a review, follow us on social media, do all the things to help support us so that we can keep putting out content to, for, and about women. Until then.